Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Meet the Community talk here at the Second Life 11th birthday community celebration. This is one of a series of talks we've been doing. We've had Meet the Designers, Meet the Artists, Meet the Communities, and it's my pleasure to welcome back the Doctor Who roleplay community, as it's sometimes called, perhaps more properly called Time Lord roleplay, because the one person you won't meet in this roleplay is the Doctor himself. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, because he's a god moder and he sucks at RP.
Yes, exactly.
But he looks fantastic in a little pink tutu. I just want to point that out to you.
Okay, so
well, I'm glad you got to see him in one.
Well, it was Vegas, you know.
All right. You're supposed to tell.
So can I start off by asking what the premise underlying this community is?
Sen, you take this one.
Okay. Well, it's interesting asking this question now, because a year ago, we were actually two role plays, two rather large communities. Oliesti and New Gallifrey were two separate Doctor Who role plays, and we've spent the better part of the past 8 months integrating both out of character. Judy here now owns basically every, or close to every, Doctor Who related sim in Second Life. And we've also tried to integrate our stories. Since Oliesti and New Gallifrey had very separate backstories and plots, that we've worked very hard to try and integrate together over the past few months. But the basic premise is that we are all Time Lords, as seen on Doctor Who, that somehow found our way here. Exactly how we got to this place, we're not quite sure. That's part of our ongoing story. We're trying to figure it out. We blow things up, we explore our characters, etc., and so forth.
Quite a lot of blowing up recently.
There has been a lot of blowing up recently. Some pretty extravagant special effects in some of our role plays recently.
What's the fun if you can't blow something up once in a while?
I'm saying, I agree.
Sadly, my real-world employers don't agree with you on that.
I know, mine either, actually. Yeah, that's what makes Second Life so great.
Yeah, you can blow things up. So there is a whole kind of range of stories happening, some sort of large-scale stories and some more personal. How do you, I mean, you've got the problem of bringing the two separate lines together, but you presumably also, as an ongoing thing, have the problem of keeping storylines rolling over, not contradicting each other on all sorts of levels, the kind of the big overall mega story and the smaller stories that people are developing. How do you keep track of it all, and how do you kind of make sure everyone gets what they need?
Hopefully not badly. Well, you're looking at a pretty good cross-section here on this panel of our roleplay. As the president of the High Council, I do roleplay in character, but predominantly my job is to hopefully keep things from falling apart, character-wise. Judy actually owns The Sims, so while we do get to roleplay together once in a while, not nearly enough. I try and keep the roleplay organized. She tries to keep the business side of things running. Victor runs one of our houses, which means he has several people under him. And the Madman is in one of those different houses. So me and a few other people, Judy and some people who are sitting in the audience, we come up with stories. And this involves everyone to a certain extent. But then the rulers and leaders of the smaller groups, like Victor here, they try and make sure that their group of people has intimate involvement in the larger overarching story. And then the individual members, like the madmen, have their own personal stories that sometimes cross over into the larger ones and sometimes don't.
Say you came along and you wanted someone comes up with an idea for a story. How would they go about making sure that story happened? Well, maybe not making sure it happened, but how would they kind of develop the idea so that it got taken up by the group and used?
Well, it depends if they want to, if it's going to be a mainstream story where they want it to be like a headliner, or if it's just going to be something they're going to keep within their own house and their own role play. Because one of the things I did when I first started Olesti was I wanted to make sure everyone was included, in that they weren't shut out and told, no, you can't do this, within certain parameters. Like we don't do vampire role play, we don't do major character role play, but there's a ton of different species in the Gallifreyan culture that we have interacted with. So if it's something where they wanted it to be major within the houses and seen by the High Council, then normally they would come to Sen, myself, or the governor of Olesti, which is Vale Cronus now. And can they hear me?
Yes.
Someone just okay. That is to make sure that their type of role play, if they wanted to be like a widespread one, wasn't going to cross over to something that Victor had already started or the Man-Mad had already started. But if it's something just exclusive within their own group and they wanted to, use a sim or an area in the sim for their own personal thing, that's fine.
Right. I'm not sure if anyone can transcribe this. It's a bit chaotic.
I like chaotic. Chaotic's fun.
Yeah. Chaotic, the doctor.
Yes, well, the doctor also likes fezzes, and not terribly fond of them myself. So, trust me, I'm not the doctor.
So, in conclusion to what I was saying, if we had to have a major role play right now in order to bring the cities together and collapse them so we can do a rebuild structurally, so everything works for everybody and it's all uniform. So that storyline may not continue as far as, what we were doing to bring it to that point, but other stories are going to branch off of it from now.
Right, and that was kind of like a fixed point that you
Correct.
were working towards, and now you will move away from.
Exactly.
Yes, we're bored. Let's totally wreck 2 sims and rebuild them from scratch.
Yeah. And
Lovely.
send everyone flying, lag everyone out.
I suppose the actual definition wouldn't be a fixed point, but a fixing point, I guess.
That's a good way to
I'm
put
sorry,
it.
that was a
Exactly.
bad pun. Someone's going to hit me with a fish. I know it.
We're going to write that in the book.
Right, that gets credited to San, because as far as anyone knows,
No.
he sent that to me in an IM.
No.
To break down what, because I'm listening to the two explanations of the role play, and I'm looking out to the audience, and I'm spotting quite a few people who I don't recognize who are probably here to find out how the RP actually works. It sounds confusing, right? For a science fiction based role play, everyone is used to Star Trek, where you all role play in the same ship. Everyone is used to Star Wars, where you generally role play in the same city or the same ship, with a straight command structure, and you need to climb up the ranks. Take all those ideas, throw it out the window, because the Doctor Who / Time Lord RP flies a lot more loose than that. The RP itself is broken down sort of like your atypical city style roleplay, like New Babbage, like in Silico. You've got the main city itself, which is, of course, Oliesti and New Gallifrey. Everyone walks around there. But in the cities, you've got your splinter neighbourhoods. That's where the houses come in. Served like 6 houses. You've got House Patrexes, House Arcalian, House Cerulean, House Sklendes, and the other ones I can't remember because I don't have enough coffee. And that's like little neighbourhoods within the city itself. Those neighbourhoods internally roleplay within that group. And then when Sen shouts at us all, we all start role-playing together and blow things up. That's basically the general description of it. Yes.
There's a little bit more though. I mean, you've got the various houses, but you've also got, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention also you've got the House of Jade Dreamers, which is almost a satellite to the RP itself. We're semi-independent from High Council. We exist on a completely different area called Carden, and while we do RP with the New Gallifrey and Oliestes, and we do wander about their city, we also have our own place that, you know, people come to and have a bit of fun. And yeah, it's, you know, what Vic didn't actually mention is while you have these subsets, each subset not just has its own storyline and everything, they have their own style.
Yeah,
You know,
very much.
They have their own way of doing things and their own way of interacting with each other, etc. And that's kind of what makes the overall RP, at least for me, interesting, because I get to see all the way these people interact, and for the most part, then come in and just confuse the living hell out of them.
And Jade Dreamers are not the only split off group. I saw someone mention in chat there's Sectime Family, there's there's the Celestial Intervention Agency, there's Black Fleet, there's Iapeliat, and
It was Unit at one time. I don't know if someone's still doing that or not.
Yeah, yep. There's the Chancellery Guards, which of course do fall under the High Council, but they've been known to go off and do their own thing. So there's
if they fall under the High Council, you might want to train them a little better. They should be standing.
Yes.
Bob holds his own. He does fine.
Yes, he does.
Yep.
And you have your own meter, of course. She says delicately.
The meter. Oh, you mean the meter that I have on my head?
No, the media.
Oh, media.
Media.
Yes.
That would be you,
yes.
Saffia.
Big hand for Saffia. She actually makes us all look good when we do the whole video thing.
I'm saying.
Yep. Which actually works out kind of well, because the biggest criticism that a lot of, even in the early days, this was even before Oliesti existed, when it was virtually only the Land of Who under Bazarbil Eccleston, Katrina under the old crew of Nodster, Marine, and Ezzy. I haven't seen any of those three for months now. But when the role plays were starting to get together, when Sen and Ulon, Sputters, got together and basically built up the New Gallifrey role play, one of the criticisms of not just the Doctor Who / Time Lord roleplay and sci-fi roleplay in general is, if you go on vacation, like a lot of people do during summer, and you're away for a month and you come back, you've basically missed everything. The idea that Saffia had for New Gallifrey Public Record was absolute genius. You don't miss anything. You just watch the videos.
Yep.
It's just sort of news bulletins from the big events and...
Yep.
So, but I'm looking for people to come and help me with it because it's got huge. I keep opening a folder which has 100 gigabytes of film in on my computer and then just closing it.
But at the risk of having more fish thrown at me, you should have known this. It's bigger on the inside.
Yeah. All right.
So you have all this, but what does it actually mean to be a Time Lord? How do you know, there are storylines, there are characters. Can anyone just come along and be a Time Lord? What does it take to be a Time Lord? What does it take? You know, if someone wanted to come and join in the role play, what would they need to do? Let's define Time Lords, and let's also think about what they would need to do to come in.
You want to take this one, Sen, first and scare everyone off?
Well, I think the Madmen brought up a very good point about how every one of these splinter groups is very different in their style. And I think first thing you need to do is go to Oliesti and walk around, and Judy and everyone that runs that sim has put out some wonderful literature. We're rebuilding at the moment. I don't know if that lit's back up yet, but if not, it will be very soon. And just read, watch some of the videos. If you see a group that really looks, I like their style, I like schizophrenic coffee drinkers who have large lions walking by their sides, then you want to go hang out with the Madmen's group.
Yeah.
If you want
or just me in general, that's
if you want to be a mobster with their own space station who likes grafting animal parts onto their body, then you'll go hang out with House Cerulean and Vic and so on and so forth. Every group has their own very unique style, their own character options. You don't have to look like a Time Lord. We have furries in different houses. We have just about every sci-fi concept. And even if you have a character that falls outside of the Doctor Who universe somewhat, but you still want to participate, we've just recently begun partnering with Ayupeliot, so that there's pretty much a way for you to come in no matter what.
And now that we have Gallifrey next to us, Cheshire has graciously offered us a portion of his mall as an ambassador center for other alien races, Sims, whichever, to use that as like a starting point to branch off new role plays, because not everyone in our Gallifrey role play is Gallifreying.
Right.
You don't have to be.
Nope.
And you don't have to be Time Lord. You can be one of the outsiders, which is basically a Gallifreyan who doesn't want to be part of the political scene that we all go through.
So, how do you formulate villains? Because, the basis of good role play is conflict. Do you use the traditional Doctor Who villains like Daleks and Cybermen? Are there people who want to role play those?
Sometimes, yes. We have a group called Dalek Empire. The Daleks have been involved somewhat in the past. They will be again coming soon. We have some traditional, when we blew up Oliesti, it was attacked by Rachnos, which have been seen on screen. We've seen Reapers, Rachnos, Daleks, a lot of traditional on-screen villains. We've also made up our own. One of our big baddies right now is an original character called the Abbot. So, all of the above.
Someone has just said a good idea may be for each house, etc., to produce a supplementary text that attempts to describe the personality of the group. Yeah. I'm thinking of something to help people choose beyond the canon definitions of each house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That will probably be up like a note card giver once the new Panopticon is built and the eye is in place. All the old literature would just be put back in again.
We could also put it on NGPR website.
Yeah.
Which would be useful, because then you can point to people at the web if they can't actually get in.
And usually with each leader of each house, they usually decide what their personality is going to be on their premise. So that's what I've been leaving it up to, and like Victor's going to set the atmosphere for his group, and Griffin's not here today. I don't know, how do you say his name? Was it Griffin?
Griffin.
Griffin isn't here today, but he would set the personality in his group, which is Dromenian, and Ulan is going to set what goes on in his group. So whatever the six houses are, those are the personalities. Their leaders are going to filter through their own groups.
So, to what extent do you respect the Doctor Who TV programs as canon?
100%.
Oh yeah.
You are not allowed to contradict directly anything seen on screen in any way.
Including that awful Fox TV movie.
Yes. We're stuck with it. Sorry.
Well,
don't be
to be
picking them
fair,
up, my friend.
to be fair,
Uh-huh.
they already contradicted themselves on that. So
Yes,
I think
right,
we're safe.
exactly. Right. Yeah.
It's hard not to contradict when there's so many different, because we're not set to what's going on the screen, you know. So and sometimes it's hard to contradict what's going on there, because next you know they've done it themselves, and now we're like, okay, what do we do now?
But actually,
Eccleston's not the 9th Doctor. All you 10 noobs have to change yourself to 11th noobs. You know, so it's like, where do you go from that? So there's always you can't really back yourself into a corner where there's no other avenue to go, and that's what's really good about this, because it's not regimented where it's set in stone and you have to do it this way. There's always so many different avenues to go in.
And we actually have one of these side groups, our Celestial Intervention Agency. The guy who's kind of in charge of that, David Abbott, is really quite a Doctor Who canon expert. And pretty much one of the primary jobs of our CIA is to basically fix contradictions. If something comes up on screen, then he'll suggest a story to us that we can actually use to fix it so that we don't contradict ourselves.
That sounds very good. So, with respecting the canon so completely, let's talk a bit about the hardware that goes into being a Time Lord, because this is the ability to travel through time and space. You might say that you could do it just by TPing from Sim A to Sim historical B and say, hey, I've done it. But you actually developed quite an elaborate system for getting around the grid. Perhaps you could talk a bit about that.
Hands of Omega has been around now for almost 8 years. We are, I guess, sneaking up on being one of Second Life's oldest businesses, which is kind of frightening. We have over 200 Doctor Who and TARDIS related products for sale, all basically designed to give people as accurate an experience as they possibly can. We've had various people come in and out of the organization. Vic has built several things for us that are on sale. Cobalt, Ezzy, Angus, all partners of Hands of Omega, builders. Some of them have had a part in the role play, some of them haven't. It's all very tied in together. When one of us comes up with a cool idea in the role play, I'll sit down and say, oh, well, the TARDISes can't do that, so the next update will make sure that they can. So it's all kind of tied in together very closely. The business side of things, as I said, Judy owns The Sims and I own Hands of Omega. We talk quite a bit about the business side of things to make sure that everything's kind of working well together.
So how do the TARDISes actually work, roughly?
Well, Judy mentioned Cheshire, who runs Novatech, another very large sci-fi company here. He owns a database, and we've been partners with him on that database. And you have a council room on your land. If you go to Aliesti or Evening Star or New Gallifrey or any of the sim complex that Judy owns, you'll see this beautiful build on the ground, but if you go up in the air, you'll start seeing all of these weird skyboxes, and those are the TARDIS council rooms. We have small one-prim resers, almost 1,500 of them right now, placed all over the Second Life grid, private sims mainland, and you can go there. These resers are divided up into categories. We have social, business, and roleplay. And every one of these resers has exteriors. Police boxes, of course, is what everyone knows. Outhouse, cars, wash machine, dumpsters, spaceships, you name it. You can land as pretty much anything you want. And you pop out and you're a Time Lord now standing in the middle of New Babbage, and you've just stepped out of the side of a steam engine. And there you go.
If I can cut in for a second.
Please.
Said and mentioned you see all these skyboxes in the console rooms. It doesn't necessarily just have to be the console rooms. You know, a lot of the console rooms have, you know, doors you can add on to. So I mean, if you are, you know, limited in prim, he's got some console. I think what's your smallest one? The pod is like 25 prim, right?
25 land impact, yes.
Yeah, 25. Yeah, I still use the old-fashioned prim because I'm an old git. But you know, you can get it down to 25, or you know, he's got some that are far more elaborate, and then you can add on to them. And if you're a psychotic such as myself, you know, you can really add on to them. My TARDIS is something like 85 rooms, you know, so it's, you know, it's, yeah. I bought a sim just for my TARDIS, but I mean, it's really, even if you are going just with stock things, they're modifiable, so you can personalize them however you want. I mean, I don't, in all honesty, I think I've rarely seen someone with just a stock TARDIS console. They've at least personalized it somehow. And some have, as I said, just expanded the living hell out of it.
Okay, I will admit with my TARDIS, I haven't modded it at all. It's still the basic TARDIS. But the door,
the disco one.
Yeah, the door connects. A lot of people don't knock the disco. A lot of people like the disco.
Yeah.
But I have just connected it to a skybox that I've got, which is quite low prim. It's one of Karl Matzerath's dream scenes, the Atelier, and that does as a back room to the TARDIS. But
well, I mean, to give you an idea of how modifiable those Hands of Omega consoles are, most of us here have been in Zenobia Time Station. All that station basically is a bunch of rooms inside a hull that's bolted onto a modified Hands of Omega console. That's all Zenobia Station is. That station started off as a modified Hands of Omega console, and I just bolted bits of hull, ripped out the room, started ripping out everything else, and basically rebuilt the console from scratch. You can, I have seen, in fact, one of them still out there. I have seen console, like TARDIS complexes that are in excess of 10,000 prims. They literally take up an entire region, and one of them is still out there, but I haven't seen her online. But she's on a mainland sim, so that they're extremely customizable. You can literally, if you have enough or a big enough chunk of land, you can literally just keep bolting room onto room onto room, and you can have a TARDIS that you can get lost in.
I've had people complain about that in mine.
But you can also start very modestly with a 25 prim TARDIS, and it does the business.
Yep.
I think this is worth stressing so people don't feel, oh my God, you mean if I play this, I have got to buy a sim. No, you don't need to.
Functionally, they're a template. The 25 prim kind of introductory TARDIS has the exact same scripted flight system as Vic's monstrosity that hangs up, much to Judy's dismay, above Oliesti, soaking up about, 3,000 prims or something.
Yeah, it's about 3,000 now.
Yeah.
Used to be 5,000.
It's identical functionally. There is no difference.
So if someone wanted to start, how would you advise them to go about it? Choose a house, or what?
Yeah, just go to the shop. Just search for TARDIS or Hands of Omega, and just see what's in your price range, what's in your prim range.
Yeah, if you just go to the Olesti Mall, there's demo resers, and the Gallifrey Mall, there's demo resers for mostly all the TARDIS makers, and see what. I started off with Novelli, which was good for me in the beginning, but then I switched over to Hands of Omega, and then I bought a few others after that just to test the flight system. So right now my two favorites are Novatech and Hands of Omega because of the flight system.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do as well, Olieste, the city itself, has just been demolished. The only bit that's standing is the Mall, actually, over in Evening Star, because Jenna's basically started building from the Mall outwards. That way, we don't have that way. All the people renting the stores there aren't looking out into a desolate sim that's been wrecked. So you'll find a whole load of people either hanging around in the Mall or hanging around in the station. If you're looking for advice, hints, tips, pop over to Olieste. There's always somebody around to give you a hand.
Right, now let's talk a bit more about Doctor Who. Would we say that being a Doctor Who fan is a prerequisite of joining the Time Lord roleplay? How would it be if someone really didn't know much about Doctor Who? Do you need to be an expert in Doctor Who to join in?
No.
That's what he said.
Well, if I have a lot of people that come over here that are not really familiar with Doctor Who, but they sure enjoy hanging out with us. And you still have like companions that are basically just regular people that just want to walk around and see what we're doing and play with the toys, and that's it. So it kind of works out when they're new, and if they're not fans, they will become fans.
Yes.
Yeah,
we will get them on the TARDIS.
once they start seeing all the toys that we can play with, like the TARDIS consoles, the K9s, the exteriors, yeah, they'll become fans.
And we're one of the few Sims. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say we're one of the few Sims that allows at least 2 hours of res time, so you have time to play with your toys. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I can speak from my experience. Before I joined the RP, I had a Hands of Mega TARDIS. It was given to me as a gift, and I started going nuts with it. Now I DJ, and I use it. I come in my TARDIS when I DJ, and it became kind of a thing. People would ask me for a tour. I'd give them a tour, and I can guarantee you, and Sen can probably back me up on this one. I've probably become one of his number one sellers, because people come in and they say, hey, this is really cool, where do I get one? So I send them Sen's direction, and a lot of times I help them pick one out. But I've had my TARDIS about 3 years, and in that time I've probably given a good, I'd say 7,500 tours, probably sold a console out of 90% of that.
A lot of those people that have come to your club were not Doctor Who fans, and we've sponsored a lot of giveaways, and that club is not the only one I've done it with. Hands of Omega, and I know a lot of other Doctor Who related companies have done this, and I'll have someone IM me and say, I got this really cool thing, what is it? And as you can tell from the way I talk, I am American, and so I'm the first to admit that it's usually an American that's like, what's this thing? Because anyone from the United Kingdom that doesn't know what a TARDIS is just needs to hang it up and go home. But here in the US, I apparently a lot of people still don't know. Shame on them. And so now that we're all kind of in one big complex, I just say, hey, here's a landmark, go there, check it out. Here's a couple Wikipedia sites. You'll get sucked in, trust me.
So what would you sorry, take a deep breath. I'm trying to say this without saying it. I guess that if people wanted to catch up on how the roleplay goes, looking at NGPR would be a good place to start to get the storylines.
You can go ahead and toot your own horn. That's just fine. So.
Yeah.
Market, Saffia, market.
It's always well done.
It's the way of the universe. What do you think? I just mentioned I DJ.
Okay, so I was also going to tell a little story here as well. I've known Spatters, Ulan Spatnik, for absolutely ever, and we featured him and we featured his TARDIS, the etheric travelling cabinet, which is a wonderful Victorian vaguely steampunky TARDIS, although he's completely redone it recently. We featured it in an issue of Prim Perfect. I think it was Prim Perfect 10. And that was back at the time of SL5B, which was the first SLB that Prim Perfect came to. And we had lots of space that year. So we actually offered people who were in the most recent edition of the magazine place to put stuff out. And what Ulon put out was a TARDIS so that people could go up and visit his TARDISes. He put out the exterior. So what you did was you walked inside, touched the back wall, and you got teleported up to the TARDIS, which, okay, I'm going to really pull back the curtain on this one. That's how you get around. You res the TARDIS on the ground, you walk in, you touch the back wall, you take them up to the main TARDIS that's behind the exterior.
Seriously? I had no idea.
Howls of protest from the audience at this blatant pulling back of the curtain. But it was a huge success. I remember taking a gang of 5 child avatars up there. They kind of came around saying, "What's going on? What's this?" And I said, "Come on, I'll show you." And they were just like, it was such fun to show them, because they could do what I think adults want to do, but adults are always trying to be too cool to actually do it. Like, you take kids into the TARDIS and they're like, "Whoa! What does this do? What does that do?" Ulan told me afterwards, rather testedly, he spent about 3 days resetting all the switches after I'd let the kids.
Yeah.
Console lock is a wonderful thing.
And he also had a kind of list of people who'd visited, because he was quite interested to find out. And he found M. Linden, who was then the very new chief executive of Linden Labs, had been wandering around looking at things and had actually gone up and visited his TARDIS. So,
Jake Linden, when Linden Labs had a European office, Jake Linden actually granted me access to Linden Island to help him set up a TARDIS to use as his office. So he had a tenant, David Tennant, counts over him as his office with Linden Labs on Linden Island.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's good to know. Okay, we're going to have to finish in a minute. So I would just like to say, I'm going to now ask, because I know that all of the panel are Doctor Who fans, I'm going to ask them each in turn, what are you hoping for with Peter Capaldi, the new Doctor Who?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I hope that Peter Capaldi doesn't pull a David Tennant, become a traitor, and puts on a fake English accent. I hope that Peter Capaldi actually uses his true Scottish accent. And I've heard that he actually will. He won't cover the accent up. He'll actually use the Scottish accent. That's all I'm wanting. Because if you look at Capaldi, he is one heck of an actor. He is really one really good actor. So things are going to be interesting with him in the lead role. Very interesting.
They've certainly brought in a heavyweight actor, haven't they?
I'm hoping he's something like Hartnell and Pertwee together. That's what I'm hoping for. With the gadgets and all the fun stuff and the little bit of the crotchiness and, bring that back. But the cleverness and the chivalry at the same time.
And that would be very good. That would be very cool.
I personally would like to hear the line, What the hell was I thinking? Bow ties aren't cool.
Yeah. I think John Hurt got him on that one.
Okay, and Sen, what about you? What are you hoping for with Peter Capaldi?
I don't really care. and I say, I don't mean that cynically. Complete opposite. Every actor that's played the Doctor has had good episodes and bad episodes, but they've all been outstanding actors with great character. I just want to see him. I think he'll be brilliant.
Yep.
I agree with you there. I think he will be brilliant.
Okay, another question. What's your favourite Doctor Who scene or storyline ever?
Well, I can take this straight off if nobody else wants to take it first.
You can go, yeah.
The Horror of Fang Rock.
Oh, nice one.
That is a storyline that. Okay, that's a storyline that it's a Tom Baker storyline where he was with Leela. They wind up at a lighthouse, Fang Rock, where they run into what they believe is a ghost. It's a shape-changing alien that basically kills everyone. And it's just it had, to me, the greatest combination of horror and science fiction and intrigue and mystery and humor, and it was brilliant. And it was shot on a budget of, I think, 50 pence, and it was still, to this day, probably even when you finally see the alien in its actual form and you see that it's squirted latex in a puddle, still probably the most terrifying serial they've ever done.
Okay, right, who's up next?
John Pertwee, Claws of Axos.
Again, explain why.
For me, it was, the storyline was a bit weak, but it was a classic premise for the early half of the John Pertwee era. It had everything in there. It had the Doctor, obviously. It had the entire unit squad. It even had the Master in there. The quintessential John Pertwee storyline. The storyline itself was a bit weak, but it was just classic John Pertwee. It really was, and that was it was watching that, because I didn't actually start at the beginning of the John Pertwee era. I actually skipped from Troughton. I just skipped Pertwee and went straight to Tom Baker, and it was Sen that said to me, give Pertwee a chance. So I watched Claws of Axos and I got hooked. Just hooked. That's why he's my favourite Doctor now.
Sam?
It changes every time I get asked.
Yeah.
I have a favorite from every Doctor, but based on all the time we spent tonight talking about Time Lords and our role-playing stuff, tonight anyway, I'll say it's the Deadly Assassin.
See, now I got to think of another one.
You were going to say that.
Two of you took two of my favorites, so now I got to take another one.
Really?
Yeah, I do love that one.
So, Sen,
no intentions there, Sen, but yeah, I liked it.
If you give a bit of explanation of what the Deadly Assassin is.
Well, the Deadly Assassin had a couple of things unique about it. It was the Doctor's return to Gallifrey. We had seen snippets of it before, but this was the first episode to take place pretty much entirely on Gallifrey. It was also the first time we'd seen the Doctor go through an entire story sans companion. And so the whole story from start to finish had a very different type of storytelling. And I think that was one of the first times where we saw that not only could Doctor Who tell stories that no one else could tell, but they could tell them in a way that other TV shows couldn't either. That it was just really kind of a pioneering show in many ways.
Okay, so Judy, have you come up?
Well, since you guys are going for the old school, I'm gonna pick something from new school. I actually love the episode when the first one, when the Ninth Doctor met Rose and took her to see the end of the Earth. That's just one of my favorite ones. I can watch that over and over and over because there's so much in that episode that tells you what the forthcoming of the rest of the series is going to be about.
Christopher Eccleston, End of the World. That's the one.
Yes, that's the one. Mm-hmm.
I would go with a new episode too. I would just put in a vote for The Doctor's Wife.
Oh yeah,
I
that's a good one.
almost said that.
You've got to love Neil Gaiman. You've got to love Neil Gaiman.
Yep.
The Doctor's Wife.
For those that don't know, Neil Gaiman's the one that wrote that episode, and he came in as a guest writer. And there's a man who knows Doctor Who, even though he had never been a part of it before.
There is an entire spin-off portion of our role play that's basically based on the events we've seen in The Doctor's Wife that ended up spawning a whole kind of side thing that we're doing in the role play. I love that episode.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a TARDIS graveyard set up for it.
Yes.
They're not dead, they're just resting.
Yeah, they're not dead. Junkyard.
They're relaxing after a prolonged squawk.
There's been arguments to call it a graveyard or a junkyard. There's been a lot of arguments, but if you Google anything, it comes up graveyard. And there's one lost episode that they talk about where they had to cut the scene, and it's where Iris comes out and it's like everything just looks like junk, and he said, well, yeah, a piano looks like a piano and a broken bicycle is a broken bicycle, but turn off the chameleon device and you see all these TARDISes everywhere. And it's just an amazing scene that they cut, and you can Google that and watch it, and it's just a nice little piece that, you know, I was trying to implement up in the graveyard, so you can click a button and the scene would change from bicycles and junk to actual TARDISes laying there.
Okay, so we're coming to the end now, and someone else will be coming on, so we had better wrap this up, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for joining me, Judy, Sen, Vic, and the Madman. Thank you very much for coming today and joining me for this talk. It's been brilliant.
Thanks for having us on, Sen.
What he said again. Keep saying what I'm going to say before I can say it.